All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to what is the seventh episode of What Did We Learn This Week? This is a show where I share technology tips, tricks, and short lessons that I've provided to my customers over the last week with you. I'm Jonathan. I work for Minnesota State Services for the Blind as a technology trainer. And my clients range from low vision to totally blind, and I help them stay independent through the use of technology like computers, tablets, and smartphones. So today is, as we're recording this, is December 11th, 2020, and we're going to be covering three topics and doing a Q&A session. It's a pretty standard episode here. We're going to be starting with discussing what screen curtains are, which is an interesting topic. What are they? How do we use them? It's a very useful thing for screen readers. I'm going to be demoing it actually on three different devices. So I've got computers galore in front of me here. And then after that, we're going to continue on with a discussion about podcasts. We talked last time briefly about what they were. Today, we're actually going to talk about how to use the Apple Podcast app to search for podcasts and listen to them and download them. It can be a little bit of a complicated app, so we're going to be talking about just like the most important things to know so you can get into the podcasting world. And if you are an Android user, don't worry, they actually have an app that's almost exactly the same. So everything we talked about today is actually going to be very relevant if you're not using the Apple platform. And then we're going to give an introduction to watching TV and movies while blind. And specifically, we're talking about getting access to audio descriptions. So this is going to be part one of a multi-part series. Today, we're going to talk about what they are. We're going to talk about a setting you can change on your phone to get access to them if you are a subscriber to subscriptions. And the next time, we'll actually go into a couple of different streaming services and demo that, and also talk about how you can get it on broadcast TV for certain TV shows as well. And then at the end, with the time we have left, we're going to open up to a Q&A. I did have a question come in through the question line about the newest version of JAWS. So we're going to talk a little bit about JAWS 2021 when we get to the end there, and then take any additional questions. So I do want to remind everybody that if they do have questions they want to ask ahead of time, please call in our question hotline number. That's 320-428-0122. Gets you an answer machine. You can ask your question there, and I will talk about it typically on the next episode. That number one more time, 320-428-0122. Also, if this is your first time finding us, maybe you're on YouTube or checking out one of the recordings, you can sign up to get notifications about upcoming episodes at blind.support/signup. So there's no spaces there. It's not a .com, it's a .support, believe it or not. That's blind.support/sign-up. And it is worth noting that on the next upcoming episode, if you're a subscriber, you'll also get an invitation for that. We're going to be switching platforms ever so slightly. Instead of using the regular Zoom like we're using right now, which is really designed for a meeting, we're going to be using Zoom Webinar. Now, the good news about that is that the way that you attended today is exactly the way you're going to attend next time. We're going to send out the email. There's a Zoom link. It uses the Zoom software. You don't do anything differently. If you're calling in through the phone line, exactly the same way. So in a lot of ways, things won't be changing, with the exception of with Zoom Webinar, everybody's microphone's not going to be live until we get to the Q&A section. It's something that there's going to be a way to answer a question through text or for me to unmute you. And we'll talk about that at the very beginning of that episode when we get into the Q&A section. So don't worry, you don't have to look up or do any homework for that. That'll just be ready to go. The Zoom webinar feature is just going to work a little bit better since this is more like a presentation than it is like a roundhouse meeting. And the other part of that that's going to make it really interesting is I'm going to be having some guests on, some guest speakers or panelists to share their experiences, their tech knowledge with us. And that format's going to make it very easy for us to kind of switch between who the speaker is and just make that whole thing a lot easier. So next time, new tool. You don't have to do anything different. Just know that we're going to be even better next time, as we're constantly learning how to even do this show. All right, so that's my big intro here. Let's jump into the topics here. So our first topic is talking about screen curtains. So what a screen curtain is if you are if you're a user of a screen reader, whether it's on the iPhone or a Mac or a Windows machine, whenever you're using the computer, someone else can see what's on the screen. And although this is useful if someone is present and helping us, or if we have usable vision that we're taking advantage of when we are using, even though we're using a screen reader, that's great. But if we want a little bit more privacy, for example, let's say we use headphones with our phone when we're on the bus or we're doing some form of transit. I know we're not doing a lot of transit right now, but if you're out and about and you don't want someone to be able to look over your shoulder and see what's going on the screen, you can turn on the screen curtain. It turns the screen black and still fully functional, works great with the screen reader, but no one can see what's going on visually on the screen. Now, there's another reason why you might want to use this beyond just privacy. The other reason why you might use it is that, at least on the iPhone, for example, it will decrease the battery drain that's going on when the phone is using the display. So it literally turns the display off, which is the most power hungry part of your phone. So turning that display off if you don't need it will also make your battery loss much longer. And that can be very useful because VoiceOver is generating speech. It's constantly giving updates. VoiceOver is kind of a battery drain to begin with. So our screen reader users already experiencing a lower battery life per day than the sighted user is. But if we turn the screen curtain on, we get to cut off that display. We get to save a bunch of energy, and that's going to give us back a bunch of that battery that we lost. So privacy and battery efficiency is a big difference. Now, the battery efficiency makes the most sense on the phone. When we talk about the computers are a little bit different, but I'm going to get into that as I demo it. So this is actually a pretty short demo because screen curtains are really easy to use. So I'm going to bring up here, so with the visuals so you can see, I've got an iPhone here with VoiceOver turned on, and the display is currently on. Now, if I do my VoiceOver gestures, flick left.
Net Newswire.
Okay, flick right.
Podcasts.
And I can hear my VoiceOver reading. I can see the visuals, the screen is on, it's nice and bright, and I would like some privacy. I might be plugging in my headphones, for example, or I just want that battery to last longer. To turn on the screen reader on the iPhone, we're going to do a special gesture that's a 3-finger triple tap. That's 3 fingers, 3 times in a row, 3 and 3. And we do want to do this fairly swiftly, tap, 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 nice and fast in order to work. There is a little bit of a pitfall we can go into if we don't get this gesture just right. I'm going to show you what to do if that happens. So, screen curtain on, 3 fingers, tapping 3 times, 1, 2, 3.
Screen curtain on.
There goes my screen curtain. So if you can see the visuals, everything's gone black here. And it is totally black. The screen's actually off. If I actually just wanted to be 100% sure, I took it into the closet, I turned on the screen curtain, there's no light in there. It's literally turned off the display. I can still do my VoiceOver gestures.
Netflix.
So flicking right.
Podcasts.
Flicking left. I can still get all my use out of VoiceOver. If I want to turn the screen reader, I want to turn the screen curtain back off again, therefore turning the display back on, I just do that same gesture. 3 fingers 3 times. 1, 2, 3.
Screen curtain off.
Screen curtain's off. I can see the display. Everything's working now. The screen curtain is also a funny way of, I've had people think their phone is broken because the display is no longer working, who are VoiceOver users, and bring it in, they find out that it's just a screen curtain that is turned off here. So you want to be aware of this feature, even if you're not using it. Now, if I do turn on the screen curtain and I turn off VoiceOver, it's going to turn off the screen curtain. The display is going to come back on again because screen curtain is only a VoiceOver feature. So if I am going to hand this to someone who is sighted to do something on the phone. I can turn off voiceover, the screen curtain will turn off, and they can use it the way they've always wanted to. They always use it. They turn voiceover back on again, screen curtain turns back on again. Now, I mentioned there was a pitfall, something we should look out for. And that is there's another gesture that's very similar to the screen curtain. And if we don't know about that and we turn that on, things can get very confusing. And that is, there is a gesture to turn off speech on the phone. That's 3 fingers twice. So if I go 3 fingers 2 times, tap, tap.
Speech off.
It turns off the speech. So now when I do a voiceover gesture, like flicking to the right, it just makes a clicking sound. It doesn't read anything out loud. Now, that can be very confusing if you didn't mean to turn it on. So you're trying to do your screen curtain 3 fingers 3 times, but you accidentally hit it twice. So you have to remember 3 fingers 2 times.
Speech on.
Turns the speech on and off. You might be wondering, why would I want to turn off speech? There's actually 2 good examples I can think of. If you're using a Braille device, like a Braille writer that's connected and it's feeding all of what VoiceOver would say to that Braille reader, you can turn off the speech and just read your Braille. The other reason you might do this, and I actually have a client who's been doing this as well, is he wants to put the phone, actually puts the phone in his front pocket when he's going on a walk. So it's there and it's available, but he doesn't want the notifications. He doesn't want things coming up. Before what he's doing is he's just turning voiceover off so it wasn't speaking. As one was bumping around or moving or things were getting hit, just didn't want the speech to go off and interrupt his nice peaceful walk. And the problem with that is that when the phone starts to ring, we don't have that 2-finger double tap to answer the phone because the screen reader's off. We have to do the touch the screen, or we have to quickly try to turn on voiceover. But usually turn off voiceover, we press the side button or the home button 3 times in a row, but that will end the call. So what that means is that if voiceover is off, in order to prevent the speech from going off, and then a phone call comes through that you want to answer it, it's almost impossible to answer it without seeing the screen. You got to let it go voicemail, turn voiceover back on. It's a big hassle. So what I suggest that he do is turn the speech off, put it in his pocket, it won't talk. But if the phone starts to ring, it'll vibrate, the ringtone will go off. He can do the 2-finger double tap, answer the phone. So there are 2 reasons you might turn the speech off, but it's important to know that gesture is so similar to the screen curtain. So screen curtain is 3 fingers 3 times, on and off. Turns the screen curtain on, screen turns off, can't see it, saves your battery, 3-finger double tap, the screen comes back. Now, if you want to drive the people at the Apple store crazy, go into the store, turn on voiceover, turn off speech, turn on the screen curtain, black, no reading, and that'll really confuse people. I only know about that because somebody did this when I was working at an Apple retail store. We were lucky enough that I recognized that when the speech is off and you do a gesture, it makes a clicking sound. So it tells me, voiceover is on. It wouldn't be making those sounds, and the screen curtain must be on. So we
Edit mode.
Accidentally did a gesture there. I'm getting a little bit too excited with my hand gestures here, but so that's screen curtain on the iPhone, but it's not available just on the iPhone. It's also available on the computer. So I'm going to put the phone aside for a moment here, and I have got with me an Apple computer and a Windows computer, and the screen curtain is actually available on both of these as well. So I'm going to open up my Mac here first.
Desktop group.
Now, the Mac version of the screen curtain is a almost comically complex keyboard command. What I have to do is I have to hold down the VO keys. That's Control and Option. I need to hold down the Function key. That's usually to the left of the command key. So that's the 3 keys on the bottom left corner if you've got an Apple keyboard. Then I need to hold down the Shift key and press the minus key. So
Screen curtain on.
That turned on the screen curtain. It turned completely blank for me. And I do that same thing
Screen curtain off.
to turn the screen curtain back off again when this display comes back on again. So that's way too complicated. And I don't care to do a gesture that's complicated that I'm not doing all the time. So there is another way to do it. And that's to take advantage of the fact that you can perform a voiceover command using the voiceover commands help menu. So the way I actually do it is I hold down VO and I press the H key twice. So the first H takes me to help. The second H takes me to commands help. So Control Option HH.
Notification Center. Jonathan's AirPods Pro now nearby. Jonathan's Air.
Oh, so I'm using my AirPods here in order to hear the audio from us here, not pick it up on my mic. And my computer's really excited because it says, ooh, the AirPods are closed. I want to connect to it. So please ignore that. I'm going to hit Control Alt H twice.
Commands help menu, 13 items.
That opens up the commands help, and I'm actually going to type the word curtain in.
One item. Toggle screen curtain on.
And then I'm just going to press the Enter key.
Screen curtain on.
Screen curtains on. So want to do that real quick. I do VOH twice.
Commands help menu, 13
I
items.
type the word curtain, and I press Enter.
Curtain off.
I don't even have to wait for the screen reader to catch up to me. And that turns the screen curtain on and off on your Mac. And it's just like on the phone. It literally turns the display off and everything works. So you can save if you're using a laptop, you can save some battery life by turning on the screen curtain or give yourself some more privacy as well. So let's go to the Windows computer here. So here is my Windows machine and we're using JAWS. Now it doesn't call it a screen curtain, it calls it a screen shade, but it is actually the exact same thing. So it logged me out here while we were talking. So give me 1 second to log back in again. Oops, am I hitting Alt here? Give me 1 second here.
Enter. Welcome.
You're going to hear I like to keep nice long passwords, but that of course slows everything down when I'm doing a demo. But it does keep me very secure here. So I'm going to turn this so everybody can see the screen here. So I'm doing this with JAWS. It's actually a JAWS feature, not a Windows feature. And there wasn't one in NVDA unless you can add one in a plugin. So I'm going to perform that shortcut. And so that one's interesting. It is insert spacebar. As you might know, those give us some stacked commands here. And then I hit the F11 key.
Screen shade off.
And there's the screen shade. I'm going to do the same thing. Insert space. And I'm going to hit F11.
Screen shade off.
The screen shade is off right now. So that's how I can do that with JAWS. Now the JAWS does have one distinct difference. With the Apple computer and the iPhone, it actually turns the display off. That gives me that battery savings. On the JAWS version of it, they can't turn the display off. It's a very kind of deep level thing. So what they do instead is they just display black across the screen. So the display is still pulling power to generate that black screen. So you're not going to get the same battery savings that you get on a iPhone or a Mac computer here, but it does give you that extra privacy as well. I did some research too, and there is not built into TalkBack, which is the screen reader on Android. They don't have a screen curtain, at least at this point, but I suspect that they will probably get a similar feature as well. It's very useful. So that is the screen curtain. Remember, on the iPhone, 3 fingers 3 times. On the Mac, you could try the Control Option Function Shift minus, or you can just go to Help, VOH twice, type in the word curtain, and press Enter. And then on Windows, that's using JAWS, that's insert space, and then hit F11. So hopefully you get some more battery life, have some more privacy, or if one of these features get turned on accidentally, as they sometimes do, you know what to do. And with that, let's move on to the next topic. So we're going to jump into part 2 on podcasts. Although I just realized something I forgot to mention at the very beginning. If people are using the visuals here, you might have noticed I'm sporting about a 2-week-old beard right now. And I just wanted to explain just real briefly that this is not a permanent feature, but something I'm actually doing for a video I'm making for my nieces and nephews in the near future. So it's actually kind of a joke beard, but I will say it looks pretty good if you ask me. So I just wanted to explain that in case anybody's looking at the visuals and they go, Jonathan looked different in episode 7. Well, that's the reason why. So podcasting. We talked last time about what a podcast is. So it's like a radio show that's been recorded, and we can listen to it later at any point on our phones, on our smart speakers. They can be anything from something professionally produced from public radio, for example. I've got a couple that I like to listen to something that two people created and posted up on the internet because they really wanted to talk about Star Wars or something like that. So, whole range of things. And we talked about how you can ask Siri, if you know the name of a podcast, you can ask Siri to play that podcast for you, and it just plays it. Or you can ask Alexa to play the Blind Abilities podcast, for example. And it'll play the latest episode. And that's the easiest way to start. But if you really love podcasts, or you don't know the names of the episodes or shows you want to watch, you're going to need to know how to explore a podcasting app. Now, Apple produces the most popular podcasting app, and they use a giant database that's the most popular podcasting database. So that's where we're going to go with today. And it's an app called Podcasts that's pre-installed on all their phones and all their tablets. Now, if you are on an Android phone and you want to get into it, well, the Google Assistant can play podcasts just like the Amazon devices and just like Siri can. And also, Google produces their own podcasting app called Google Podcasts. These two apps are laid out very similarly. So if you follow along with this one and take what you learned here, that's all going to transfer over to an Android phone also using TalkBack and the Google Podcasting app. Now, some of the menus and layouts going to be different, but they actually are structurally very similar. So stick around, stick with me if you're using an Android phone. I think you're going to find this to be equally as useful. The Apple Podcasting app is also available on the Mac. If you're at a Windows computer and you want to listen to podcasts, there are some podcast apps that you can download to listen to on that machine as well. But actually, every single podcast out there has a web page. So if you hear about a podcast like Blind Abilities, if you go into Google, you'll oftentimes find a web page where you can actually listen to them right from Google Chrome or Edge or whatever browser you're using. So everybody can enjoy this, even though we're going to be focusing today on the Apple Podcast app. So let me grab my phone here and let's open up the podcast app and learn a little bit about its layout to begin with here. So I've already got my voiceover open and I've actually already got on podcast. So I'm just going to launch that with my one finger double tap.
Started editing.
Oh, I must have done that flick gesture earlier here and it put it into edit mode here. So I'm just going to stop editing mode by doing either pressing the home button or using the home gesture, which I'm going to use on my phone here.
Finished editing. Messages. 3 unread messages.
All right. So I'm going to navigate back to podcasts here. I've got it on my first page. I'm just going to flick to the right till I get there.
Maps. Photos. Camera. Weather. Music. Clock. Reminders. Fold. Net Newswire. Podcasts.
Excellent. Double tap on my podcasts.
Podcasts. Listen now. Heading.
So the podcast app is a tabbed application, and that means it is laid out the same way as the phone app is, for example. And that means it has a variety of tabs that make up the different sections of the app, and those tabs are stored at the bottom of the app. So this app's very, very important to be able to do the jump to the top or jump to the bottom gesture. Now you can do so by dragging your fingers around the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen. I prefer to do a 4-finger tap to jump to the top or the bottom. And that's what I'm going to be doing here, but know that you can do it whatever way works best for you. Another little tip, and I know I probably mention this all the time, but if you're doing something like the 3-finger or the 4-finger tap, rather than trying to curl all your fingers together like a claw in double tap or tap the screen like that, I find it works better to use the pads of my fingers and just hold my hand out flat, almost like I'm doing a high five with my fingers slightly pulled apart and doing that gesture on the phone. I just find that works more consistently for me, but you should find what works best for you. So I mentioned this is a tabbed application, and the Google Podcast app is the same deal. There's a selection of buttons across the bottom. They represent the different sections. It opened up first to a section called Listen Now. And Listen Now is the place where it collects the podcasts that you're subscribed to or episodes you've downloaded and presents them in the order it thinks you'd like to listen to them, usually in a chronological order, for example, putting new episodes near and playing through. And if I wanted to, I could flick to the right, hear what's up next, and start playing that based on something I've already subscribed to. And I've subscribed to a couple podcasts here. So I'm going to start by flicking to the right to show you a little bit about Listen Now.
Notification settings button. Up next, heading. See all button. Judge John Hodgman, 496. Again.
I'm going to pause this for a moment here. So we had a notifications, which is where I can change when I get notified about a new episode. I have my notifications turned off. I just like to go to the podcast episode and check. But if you want to know exactly when something new comes out, you can be notified for it. It said up next. That's representing that we're moving into the up next, or what it thinks we should be playing next. I flick to the right, there's a see all, to see a list of every podcast. And if I kept flicking to the right, I started getting to episodes. This is an episode of the Judge John Hodgman podcast. He's a comedian, and he presides over little arguments between people. It's like the least dramatic version of the People's Court. Things like, should we get a cat or should we get a dog? Or is a hot dog a sandwich? So it's a comedic podcast I like to listen to, and it's thinking, hey, you were listening to this recently. I was. Would you like to pick up from it? If I flick to the right, I'll hear the next episode it suggests, and etc. Now, before we fill this up, we got to start subscribing to podcasts. So let's jump down, let's explore those tabs, and see how we can actually find a podcast worth listening to. So I mentioned those tabs are at the bottom, so you can touch the bottom or drag across the bottom of the screen to get there. I'm going to use my 4-finger tap, and making sure most of my fingers are on the bottom half of the screen. That jumps me to the bottom.
Tab bar, search, tab, 4 of 4.
Excellent. So now I'm in the tab bar. There's 4 items there. I'm on the last one, which is search. And if I wanted to search for a podcast, I could double tap to add that to my, to search for something specific here. I don't know what I want quite yet, so I'm actually going to do some browsing here. So I'm going to flick to the left.
Library, tab, 3 of 4.
There's a library. This represents the episodes I have downloaded or have subscribed to.
Browse, tab, 2 of 4.
There's a browse tab. I'm going to flick to the left one more time.
Selected, listen now, tab, 1 of 4.
We have listen now, which is where we currently are. I want to browse and see if I can find an interesting podcast to listen to. So I'm going to flick to the right and be on the second of the 4 items in the tab, the browse.
Browse, tab, 2 of 4.
So I'm going to double tap to open up browse. And I've loaded to the browse section. Now you see, nothing really exciting or new has happened. It did make a sound, a confirmation here, and it's loaded up the browse section, but I'm still focused on that tab bar at the bottom. You notice in some apps, when you open a tab, it jumps you to the top and lets us start flicking to the right. This app's keeping me at the bottom here. Not to fret, we're going to use our 4-finger tap. This time we're going to keep most of our fingers on the top half of the screen, and that'll jump us to the very top and we can start browsing here. Remember, you can also touch one finger around the top of the screen, drag it around to find the top. I much prefer the 4 fingers, whatever you prefer though. So 4-finger tap.
Browse, heading.
Okay, I'm in the browse section here, which is predictable. It's what I chose in my tab bar. Now I'm just going to flick to the right to start browsing.
Unlocking us with Green Brown, Parcast Network, button. Action, Smartless, Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, button.
So I was in here recently, so it actually didn't start me at the very, very top. I'm going to flip myself to the top real quick here.
Page 1 of 10, browse, heading.
And start myself back up at the top. This is just because I was practicing this demo ahead of time here. I'm in the browse section. I can start flicking to the right.
Featured episode, Tim Cook on health and fitness, what tech can and cannot do, button. A person wearing glasses.
I'm going to pause this here. So what it's doing right now is it's reading me some featured episodes here. So this was an episode, an interview with Tim Cook about health and fitness. They're launching on Monday a new fitness feature for Apple Watch users, for example. And flick to the right.
Featured show, Chameleon, Hollywood con queen, who is Tahil Ramani, really, button. White text on a brown hill under a blue sky.
Gonna flick to the right again.
New show, Red Collar, Success in Murder. But new show, Bill Gates and Rashida Jones Ask Big Questions. Deep Show of the Year, Code Switch, NPR.
So I'm gonna pause here and it gives me some interesting episodes, things I might be interested in. In this case, it gave me a show here. Now, I can actually navigate this using the rotor in an interesting way too. So what this browse does is give me all these different categories. Here's some highlighted and new things. And what shows up in your browse is actually going to be different than what shows up in mine. It's based on what you've listened to before. Now, I can actually set my rotor to headings. And there's these different sections in browse that I can decide if I want to browse through. If I flick to the right, I'll have to read through all the podcasts in each of the categories. So I like to use the heading command here. So I'm going to use the rotor instead of the headings.
Speaking rate, headings.
There we go. Two fingers, turning like you're turning a knob on the screen until it says headings. And I'm going to flick down.
Our favorites this year, heading.
So focus on some of the favorite episodes. These are actually done literally by people who work in Apple Podcasts here. I'm going to flick down again.
Biggest new shows of 2020, heading.
So new shows from this year.
Biggest shows of 2020, heading.
Okay, not whether relatively new shows, but are they just big? That sounds interesting. Let's see what the big shows of this year are. I'm going to start flicking to the right now.
See all, button. Call Her Daddy, Barstool Sports, button. This American Life, button. Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, Armchair Umbrella, button. My Favorite Murder with Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, Exactly Right, button.
And I'm hearing some of the biggest shows of that year. Well, a really big one produced by NPR is This American Life. It's one that I've enjoyed quite a bit. So let's go back and see if we can find out more about that show and see if we want to listen to it. I'm going to flick to the left to go back there.
Armchair Expert with Dax, This American Life, button. Actions available, white text on a red background.
It's a button, so I can do a one-finger double tap to press that
Artwork,
button.
image, a group of black text on a white background, white text on a red background.
As you can hear, I'm getting those voiceover descriptions based off of the picture. That's something we talked about in the iOS 14 episode here. You might not get the exact same thing. What I've got now is information about the episode, the show, This American Life. So I can flick to the right to hear some more.
This American Life.
The name.
This American Life, button.
This might be confusing, This American Life twice. The second one's actually who produces it. This American Life produces This American Life. You see this with podcasts once in a while.
Subscribe button. Actions
Subscribe
available.
Button. And if I double tap on that, I can subscribe to this podcast. What that means is that the future episodes will show up in the Listen Now section, and it will even download those episodes. So if I'm in an area where I don't have access to the internet, I can listen to the latest episodes. We're going to subscribe to a podcast in just a little bit. But first, let's explore a little bit more. We don't necessarily know if we want to listen to this or if this is even a podcast we care about. So let's keep flicking to the right and let's continue to explore.
More button.
We're going to come back to that more button a little bit later, but it provides us the option to share this or email someone about this podcast. And when we subscribe to it, it allows us to change our subscription settings. And that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit here. But let's keep exploring a little bit longer. Flick to the right.
4.5 stars, 70K ratings, 2020, personal journals.
It tells me a little bit more about it. Personal journals is the category. So you might hear like true crime might be a category. Technology might be a category. I'm going to flick to the right.
This American Life is a weekly public radio show heard by 2.2 million people on more than 500 stations. Another 2.5 million people download the episodes. Heading. More button.
So I accidentally did my flick there, but I'm not going to let it read the whole description, but this tells you more about the podcast and gives me an idea whether or not I actually want to listen to it or not. Let's explore and see what type of episodes and topics they have. I just keep flicking to the right.
Episodes. Heading. Sunday, 619, The Magic Show. Actions available.
So I've got an episode called The Magic Show, and there's some options available here. Remember, when you hear options, that means I can take one finger and flick up and get some choices.
Details.
Details.
Add to my podcast. Play. Activate default.
So I have a variety of choices there. I do want the details, so I'm going to flick up until I hear details again.
Details.
And I'm going to do my one finger double tap.
Artwork, image, a red and white sign with text.
So what I have now is information about this specific episode. Let's flick to the right to hear more.
Sunday. 619, The Magic Show.
There's our title.
Add to my podcasts button.
If I
Actions
double
available.
tab it, it will add it to my podcast. So this episode will show up in the library. This episode will show up in Listen Now. It's not subscribing it. It's saying, I want this specific episode, but I don't necessarily want to play it right now. So I could double tap on that and I'll find it in the library and in Listen Now. Maybe I just want to listen for a little bit and see if it's something I care about before I decide if I want to add it. So I'm going to keep going to the right.
Play 1 hour button.
I have a play button I can tap. And I can even, if I flick 2 more times here.
More button. Just a few years before he got the internship at NPR that started him in radio, our host Ira Glass had another career. He performed magic at children's birthday parties. A powerful sense of
I'm going to pause this for a moment here. So it tells me more about what this episode is. I go, well, that sounds interesting. Let's listen to it for a second. So I'm going to flick back to the left.
More button. Play 1 hour button.
And I'm going to start to play it. 1 finger double tap.
Continue listening. 1 hour. Playing 1 hour button.
Support for This American Life comes from Capital One, offering Capital One Shopping, a downloadable browser extension that searches various sites for shoppers.
Now I'm going to pause this because it's going to do some ads and start going, but now I'm starting to listen to this latest podcast here. Now I paused it by doing a 2 finger double tap. Our magic tap, once we start playing a podcast, it now controls that until a phone call comes through or I start listening to something else. Our 2 finger double tap will now play and pause this podcast. So I can do 2 finger double tap.
What's in your wallet? More at Capital One Shop.
2 finger double tap again to pause it here. So now it's playing that podcast. Just 2 finger double tap to play and pause it. Something else happens that's not immediately obvious. And that is a new element appears on the screen. It's called the mini player. And it's a little button that is another way for us to play and pause the episode or even jump forward. The podcast will keep playing if I go to the main menu or start navigating around. The mini player is there for me to control it if I don't have that 2 finger double tap quite mastered, for example, or I want to get even more information. You'll find it above the tab bar. So tab bar is across the bottom, and directly above that is the mini player. Easiest way to get there, jump to the tab bar, 4 finger tap.
Tab bar, search, tab, 4
Bottom half of the screen, then flick to the left till you get to the last item in the tab bar.
Library, selected, listen now, tab, 1 of 4.
And then just keep going to the left.
Mini player, fast forward, 30 seconds, button.
So there's the mini player, and you'll see there's a fast forward button. I can double tap to jump 30 seconds if I want to skip ahead. Click to the left again.
Play, button.
There's that play button. So when you're playing the podcast, and if you lose track and that 2 finger double tap's giving you trouble, just jump to the bottom, flick to the left, and you'll find right after the tab bar a fast forward and a pause button. Keep in mind also that Siri can control your podcasts. So if I activate Siri, I can tell her to do things like stop playing the podcast or start the podcast. And then also, interestingly enough, I can activate Siri and say skip ahead 30 seconds or rewind 3 minutes. Just fast forward, rewind, skip ahead, and the duration. So you can have a lot of really minute playback controls if you use Siri. So I found an episode of a show. I started listening to it. Maybe I want to explore some more. Maybe I want to find a specific podcast this time. Now I'm going to do a search instead of a browse. And then we're also going to subscribe to a podcast to show you what that's like. So jump into the bottom, 4 finger tap, bottom half.
Tab bar, search, tab, 4 of 4.
The last item in the tab bar is the search, so the 4th item there. So I can get to that very bottom right corner of the screen spatially, 4 finger tap on the bottom half to jump there. I'm going to open up search, 1 finger double tap. And I mentioned I was trying this out earlier, so let me actually clear up what I did here. I've actually got a search in place. I double tap the search, and I'm going to do a 4 finger tap to go to the top.
Search, back button.
And usually there'd be a text field for me to type in. I already typed in right before I started here because I was nervous this demo wasn't going to work, and I got a little ahead of myself. So let me clear this up here so it's closer to what you're going to see.
Cancel, blind ability, search field, selected, all podcasts, blind abilities, search field. Search, clear text, button, clear text, dictate.
So usually when you go to search, you're going to get to a search field that I can
Search field is editing all podcasts. Character mode.
called all podcasts, where I can type in what I'd like to search for. If I flick to the right,
Dictate button.
you'll find a dictate button. It's the same as doing the 2-finger double tap to dictate, and it allows me to dictate what I'd like to search for. Also, just to keep in mind, just like the App Store, I can activate Siri and say search podcasts for whatever I want to search for. I'm going to use the dictate button here. Blind abilities.
Inserted blind abilities.
Very good. So it's now going to search for the phrase blind abilities, and I'm going to get some recommendations on the screen. I'm going to flick to the right until I hear a match for what I'm looking for. 1 finger flick to the right.
Cancel button. Selected all podcasts button. One of
You're going to find the option to search whether or not you're searching for all podcasts or whether or not you're searching for podcasts that are in your library if you have a rather large subscription. We're going to keep it on all podcasts.
your library button. 2 of blind abilities button.
So I found a blind abilities button. I think I found a matcher. So I'm going to do a 1-finger double tap.
Blind abilities search field.
And it's now going to search for that blind abilities, anything that thinks is a match. So I'm going to flick to the right again and see what it found. Now keep in mind, this is searching both shows and episodes. So for instance, if I'm looking for interviews from somebody, I could type in the name of the person I'd like to see an interview for. If I don't know the name of the show they were on, I just know they were on a podcast. And it'll show me all of the shows that match their name, but also all the episodes they might have been in. I'm going to flick to the right and let's hear what the results are.
Cancel button. Selected all podcasts button. Your library button. 2 shows heading.
So the first heading here is shows. Now I could also flick down
Episodes heading.
to get to episodes. And I was able to do that flick down because I set my rotor to headings earlier. I'm going to flick back up.
Shows heading.
Because what I'm looking for is the blind abilities show. If you like this show, you'll love blind abilities. They also talk about technology and they also have really good interviews. So I really like them as a podcast. So I'm going to flick to the right and see if I can find them in these results.
See all button. Blind abilities team button. Actions of
So I found blind abilities by a group called the Blind Abilities Team. That sounds right. So I'm going to double tap 1 finger.
artwork image. A black and white image of a gray circle next to a gray rectangle with black text on it. A gray circle with a black and white logo.
All right, so up gives me a logo and flick to the right.
Blind abilities team button.
And if I keep flicking to the right, I'm also going to get episode descriptions. I'm going to get a description of the show. I know this is the one I want, so I'm actually going to flick to the right till I get to subscribe. And I'm going to double tap on that.
Subscribe button. Actions of subscribe. Search back button.
So
Search
the
back button.
show is now subscribed to. If I flick to the right, where the subscribe button used to be, it's going to say subscribed.
Artwork image. A gray blind abilities team button. Subscribed.
So I can double check by flicking to the right that I did in fact get a subscription here. So a subscription means that the phone will automatically download new episodes and automatically add it to the Listen Now section and also to the library. Now, if you get a little bit podcast crazy, you can do what I did, and that is subscribe to a bunch of podcasts, and it starts to download episode after episode, and it starts to fill up your phone. So it's important to do this next step if you're not a regular listener, and that is we want to control the subscription settings here. So if I flick to the right after the subscribe on this,
More button.
there's a more button. I'm going to double tap on more.
Blind abilities team heading.
This opens up the share sheet. If you're familiar, other apps have a share button that opens up a very similar menu. There's going to be a list of things I can do with this podcast. I'm going to flick to the right. Let's hear what's there.
Close button. Share button.
So I could share this, send it as a text message or as an email to somebody.
Unsubscribe button.
Here's how I can unsubscribe.
Settings button.
And finally, settings. Now there's more options here we explore, but the settings is what we care about. So I'm going to do a 1-finger double tap on settings.
Settings heading.
And it's going to open up the settings for my subscription here. And the thing that I care about is going to be when I get to the episodes section. So you're going to hear options like subscribed on. You can turn it off here. Notifications on or off. Do you want to be notified when a new episode comes out?
Done button. Show heading. Subscribed switched button on. Notifications switched button on.
I'm fine with getting notifications, so I'm going to keep going.
When new episodes are available, they will be added to your library.
All right.
Episodes heading. Play in sequential order.
So now I've got some options for my general settings for this subscription here. There is a default podcast settings where I can say what I want to be, but I might want to update them for each particular subscription here. So right now it wants to know play in sequential order. That is, I want to play them from oldest to newest, not newest to oldest.
Selected. Play most recent first.
Should I play the most recent episode first?
Only keep the most recent episodes.
And then only keep the most recent episodes. This, I think, is relevant. If I double tap on this...
Selected. Only keep the most recent episode.
It's going to open up a new section here. So if I keep flicking to the right, I'm going to hear unplayed episodes to keep. I'm going to flick to the right to get there.
Custom settings. Unplayed episodes to keep. Heading.
And I can choose how many unplayed episodes it should keep before it starts deleting them. So if I have a podcast that's broadcasts maybe like once a week, I might forget about. I don't want it to load in, over the course of your 12 episodes and I haven't listened to any of them. I've lost interest in that. So I can restrict the number of episodes it downloads. I'm going to flick to the right to hear my choices.
Most recent. To most recent.
And I go, you know what? I probably only need to keep the 2 most recent. That's probably enough here. So I'm going to double tap on that.
Selected. 2 most recent.
The additional options are 3 most recent, 5 most recent, 10 most recent, only 1 day at a time, and then 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. By default, if you do subscribe to a podcast and you don't listen for 3 or 4 episodes in a row, podcast will stop downloading that show automatically because it assumes that you're probably forgotten or no longer listening to it. So it won't completely fill your phone up if you forget this, but I like to go in after subscribing something, go into settings and choose how many episodes I like to keep of that particular podcast. This American Life is a weekly one, but there are some podcasts that update daily. And so I might want to keep that in mind here. So I'm done here. So I'm going to find the done button. That's at the very top of the screen here. I can flick to the left to get there, or I can use my 4-finger tap to the top.
Settings. Heading.
And flick to the right.
Done button.
And we're going to double tap on done.
Search. Back button.
I made a big deal out of it. That 4-finger tap is so useful if you can get it down here. So I've subscribed to that show. It's now going to show up in my Listen Now and in my library section. So let's go back to Listen Now and see what's changed there. So when we get to my tabs, 4-finger tap at the bottom.
Tab bar. Selected. Search.
Drag
Tab.
your finger
4
across
4.
the bottom. Or drag your finger across the bottom till you get to the tab you want. Number 1 in there is Listen Now. So I'm going to flick to the left.
Library. Browse. Listen Now. Tab. 1 of 4.
I'm going to give that a double tap. And Listen Now opened up. I want to jump back to the top so I can start from Listen Now from the top. I'm going to do my 4-finger tap on the top half.
Listen Now. Heading.
And I'm going to flick to the right, and let's hear if anything's different.
Notification settings. Button. Up next. Heading. See all. Button. Blind abilities. 705. Envision AI. Winter sale 35% off. 14-day free trial and a chance to win Envision glasses. Karthik Ken from Envision Talks.
I'm going to pause that for a moment because they put a nice big description inside of the names of the episodes here. But they have an interview with someone from Envision about these new Envision AI glasses that just came out. I'm learning a little bit more about them myself. And if I double tap on this, it will start playing that episode. I can learn more about that. So that's blind abilities here. Now, after I listen to this and it's finished, it's going to delete that episode automatically because I've listened to it. And then it will start playing the next one. If I don't feel like listening to blind abilities right now, I can flick to the right and hear the other episodes I have.
Judge John Hodgman, 496.
My Judge John Hodgman.
Quick question with Soren and Daniel, 68, 99% invisible, chapter, how did this get made? 2, Conan O'Brien needs a friend, 100.
And you can hear the different shows that I've subscribed to. if I keep going, I'm also going to get additional ways I can listen now. It's just listing my shows in different ways. So whether or not it's going to list them entirely by the order that they show up in.
More info. Secretly Incredible Planet Radio
I'll keep
Science
going.
Latest episodes. Heading. See all button. Quick question with Soren and Daniel.
And if I move all the way through this listen now and get to the bottom of my podcast here, you're going to find a section. I'm going to
Episodes you might like. Heading.
It's going to say episodes you might like. It's going to start making suggestions of podcasts based on what I ever already listened to. Now, if I want a more granular way of controlling the podcast app here, I can navigate instead through the library instead of the listen now. I'm actually going to jump to the library here. So get into that tab bar at the bottom. I'm going to do my 4-finger tap again.
Tab bar. Search. Tab 4 of 4.
Flick to the left.
Library. Tab 3
And
of
I'm going to double tap to open up my library. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a list of all the shows I listen to. So I'm going to jump to the top here.
Library. Back button. Library. Back button. Edit.
And when you open it, you'll get this edit.
Library. Heading.
And then you'll get your library section. So I can then choose how I want to browse the shows that I've subscribed to or listened to. Let me flick to the right here.
Shows. Button.
So I can browse by show.
Episodes. Button. Downloaded episodes. Button. All 15. Button. Recently updated. Heading.
I'm going to browse by show here.
All downloaded episode. Shows. Button.
So I just flick to the left till I got the shows. 1-finger double tap.
Shows. 99% invisible. 1 episode. Button.
I can flick through my various shows and find out what episodes I have. So Blind Abilities we just subscribed to. Let's find out what to put on my phone here. So I'm going to flick to the right.
Access Ninja. Button. Blind Abilities. 2 episodes. Button.
I'm going to double tap on that.
Blind Abilities. Subscribed. Artwork. Image. A gray circle with a black and white logo.
I have the information for this show here. If I flick to the right.
Blind Abilities Team. Play. 705. And Vision AI.
It gives me the option to play the latest episode here.
More. Button.
There's a more button. If I double tap, I can go in and unsubscribe to this podcast or change my subscription settings that we did when we first subscribed to it. Let's say I don't even want to do that. I just want to get rid of this most recent episode. Let's say it's not of interest to me. It actually is an interesting episode, but for the sake of making a demonstration here, we'll go ahead and delete that episode without unsubscribing. So I'm going to flick to the right.
My episodes. Heading. Blind Abilities. Sunday. 705. And Vision.
So I might go, I don't intend to listen to this episode. Its particular topic is uninteresting, but I want to keep getting new episodes. Just like this was a email message, for example, and I'm going through the list of my emails, I can flick up because I've got more actions here.
Details. Play. Delete.
And there's my delete. I can double tap.
Performed action. Delete. Blind Abilities. December 3rd. 704. Apple.
And it deletes that episode and brings me to the next one that is set for my subscriptions. If I flick to the right.
See all episodes. Button. Ratings and reviews. Heading.
Sorry, I did my
See all
gestures
episodes.
right
Button.
If I go below the 2 episodes, because I told it I just want to keep the last 2 episodes, I can double tap and see all episodes, and I can go into their back catalog and download an old episode if I want to, for example. So I can go into the library. I can navigate by shows or episodes. I did shows. I can select a show I can unsubscribe to if I change my mind. I can delete an episode I don't intend on watching. So that's how I can go in and say, see all episodes and listen to an old episode from a long time ago that I might have missed that someone said, oh, you can't miss this episode of Blind Abilities, for example. So I want to go back. I'm going to do my 2-finger scrub. So I'm going to stay in the library, go back to shows here.
Blind Abilities, 1 episode. Button.
And I can continue to navigate or browse through my shows. This is also a way for me to listen to an episode. If I navigate to an episode and double tap on it, I can listen to that particular episode. So I can use Listen Now, which curates it automatically. I can go to Library and choose a specific show or specific episode I want to listen to, delete or manage my subscriptions. And so that's a really kind of a broad overview of how to use the podcast app. Now, there are additional settings and menus and different ways of navigating, but that's enough to be able to get around and do almost anything. Remember, Listen Now for your episodes, Browse for exploring, Library for managing, and search for finding something specific, a person or a specific podcast. And always remember, if this gets overwhelming and you do know that there's a podcast you want to listen to, just ask Siri, play the latest episode of Blind Abilities. Play the latest episode of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, if you like Conan O'Brien. Play the latest episode of 99% Invisible, which is a really fun design podcast, for example. And it will just play it. So you don't have to be a master of this, but if you do, you can see I can really get in there and explore and jump into podcasts. And the other great thing I didn't mention at the very beginning is everything in the Apple Podcast app is free. Nothing in here costs you anything.
A gray circle with a black and white logo on.
Oh, let me get out of here so it doesn't talk to me anymore. There we go. So you don't have to worry about there's no transactions. Everything's free, and most things are supported by advertisements. So you might hear advertisements like you do if you're listening to a show on your AM/FM radio, for example. So that's a broad overview of podcasts. I hope that you jump in and explore and enjoy them. If you want somewhere to start, that Blind Ability is a great place to start. This American Life's a wonderful show. 99% Invisible, if you like design, things like that. There's so many really good podcasts out there. And then we might actually, in the future, convert the audio from this show into a podcast so you have another way of listening to. But we're one step at a time, right? All right, with that, I think we're going to move on to our next topic, which is a quick discussion about movies and TVs watching when you are blind. And specifically, we're going to be talking about a feature called audio descriptions. So when a movie or TV show is produced, some content is produced with what's called audio descriptions. And these is basically a narrator that speaks in between the quiet parts of the show or movie to describe the action on the screen. Some people find that to be a interesting way of getting information from a movie or TV show that is strictly visual. So there are some blind people who really enjoy listening to audio descriptions. Other people don't, and they just enjoy pulling out the context by listening to the audio. There is no wrong way to watch a TV show and a movie. That is up to you. I don't care if you go to the theaters and watch it on a big screen, on a tiny phone, with audio descriptions, without audio descriptions. But a lot of people don't know how to even access audio descriptions. And that's what we're going to get into in this quick tutorial here. So, audio descriptions sound great. Are they available everywhere? Well, you might notice anything that's been broadcast on TV or has been put in the movies has closed captioning for the deaf and hard of hearing. And that's actually a law. But it's not the same rules for movies and TV shows. So whether a show or a service provides audio description can vary. But there's a couple important things to know. Although we're not in Minnesota, we're not going to movie theaters right now because we're in one of the toughest times for COVID-19 that there has been ever. And we're not going to get into that and bring everybody down right now. But that means the movie theaters are closed, but they will be opened again. And there will be a time where we feel safe enough to go back out and sit with a crowd and watch a movie on a giant screen. But if we're blind or very low vision, then we lose a lot of those details. Now, if a movie theater has any digital projectors in it, and that's pretty much every movie theater at this point, they are legally required to provide equipment that can be used to listen to audio descriptions for a movie if it was produced with audio descriptions. So when you go to the theater and you buy a ticket for a movie, you can say, I would like the equipment to listen to the audio descriptions. Usually this is a little battery pack with a set of headphones that you carry into the movie with you, and you put on the headphones, and the audio descriptions are read through those headphones. And the headphones are not like those big cans that cover up everything. They're designed so you can still hear the audio from the movie theater. Movies are not required to have audio descriptions, but almost every single major movie release has audio descriptions produced for it. Anything from Warner Brothers to Disney to MGM. A lot of these movies are produced with audio descriptions, and only some really smaller independent films are sometimes produced without them. And so you're going to find more often than not the movie theater will have audio descriptions available for that movie. And you can usually call ahead or check the online listing to see if it has audio descriptions. They'll actually label it on the webpage so you know ahead of time. They are legally required to provide that equipment and to train their staff on how to use it. Now, I have friends who really enjoy audio descriptions, and they've gone in and the battery pack hasn't worked because they forgot to charge it, or the staff doesn't really know. And that can be discouraging, but I encourage you to go in and explore it anyways. And the only way these theaters are going to learn how to use it is if people are coming in and using that equipment. And the more we use it, the more the staff will learn to and understand, the more the management will prioritize it. Most experiences are wonderful. So don't let that paint a negative picture on it. I just want you to be prepared that sometimes your needs requires a little bit of extra advocacy when we go into a space like that. But it helps out the whole community when you do so. So, movie theaters, the big screen, it's available. They're also available through broadcast TV. And I'm actually going to shoot a demonstration of that. How to listen to audio descriptions on a live TV show. Now, that's going to be provided through an alternative audio track, and sometimes that's used for Spanish, and sometimes that's used for audio descriptions. You're going to find that most primetime TV shows on networks like ABC and NBC often has produced with audio descriptions, and you just got to know how to do it. We're going to do a full demonstration on that, but know that that's a possibility. The other place you're going to find audio descriptions is on streaming TV and movie services. This has been a big advocacy project pushed by organizations like the National Federation for the Blind in order to make sure that this is available on these services. Because if the movie theaters are producing movies with audio descriptions and that movie is available on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, we should also be able to listen to that when we're listening to it on our computers or on our iPhones or tablets, for example. And to an extent, that's true. And I'm going to demonstrate that actually in Netflix here as an example, but when we come back, we're going to jump into some of the other services as well. Now, the ones that I do know provide audio descriptions are, like we mentioned, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime Video. They don't provide it on every single one of their features, and it can vary. Netflix, for example, has all of their original content is produced with audio description, and movies that they get from other services, they try to get that audio description as well, and many times they do. So if you're watching a Disney movie, for example, on Netflix, it has audio descriptions. But there are some places where those things are missing. So we're going to demonstrate on that service first, just so you get a taste for it. How do I make sure I get audio descriptions if they're available? And with Netflix, how do I find what movies have audio descriptions? We're going to be doing this on the phone, but it's very, very similar on the computer as well, or on your smart TV if you're using one of those as well. So let me get my phone back out here and bring up my iPhone screen for the visuals here, and I'm going to open up Netflix here.
Netflix. Netflix. Who's watching? Heading.
I actually just forgot one of the steps here, and I'm going to take a step back for a moment here.
Netflix.
I got really excited about Netflix, and I forgot to show you a really, really nifty setting. So normally, if we're using a service like Netflix, if we open up the movie, we start playing it, we can change the language settings. And that's where you're going to find the same place you would say, I want to listen to this in Spanish, I want to listen to this in French. That's where we're going to find our audio descriptions. But if you know you're going to use them, and you're on an iPhone or an Apple computer or an iPad or an Apple TV, or you're using an Android device, there is a setting in accessibilities that says if audio descriptions are available, use them. So that way when you listen to it, you don't have to go in and find the language setting. It's a little bit different on all these services. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go into settings here instead.
Settings. Search field is editing.
I'm going to go into settings. If you're in an Android phone, also go to settings. And I'm going to navigate to the accessibility section.
Do not screens, general, control, display, homes, accessibility button.
Let's open up accessibility.
Accessibility features help you customize your iPhone.
And as I navigate through the accessibility section, we're going to find a section called audio descriptions.
Vision, head, voiceover, zoom, magnify, display and motion, spoken audio descriptions, off, button.
If I double tap on audio descriptions,
off,
I can toggle it on.
On.
So that means now if I try to play any content, whether it's in a streaming service or something that's loaded on the phone, if it has audio descriptions, it's just going to play it for me. I don't have to navigate through all those settings. So let's go back to Netflix now. I'm actually opening up
Lift
the
for
app switcher.
App switcher. Settings, active, Netflix, active.
I'm going to navigate back to Netflix here.
Netflix. Netflix, who's watching, heading.
So we've got a couple different users on Netflix here. I'm going to select to the right till we hear me.
Edit, button, shared, button, selected, Jonathan, button, a black screen with selected,
Double
loading.
tap on that.
Target select, no active category filters.
Now I've got Netflix open. I want to make sure I can listen to some content, and I want to make sure there's audio descriptions.
Messages,
So,
now, Lucy Corbin mom, to you, Caitlin Camp, notification, messages, movie.
Sorry about that. I'm part of a group text with a bunch of my family here, and I thought I turned on Do Not Disturb, but apparently I didn't. Don't worry about it. So, where was I? Netflix. I opened up Netflix, and I want to find something that's audio described. There is a search section on the phone, and I could type in audio descriptions, and it will bring me up TV shows and movies that have audio descriptions as well. But if we're on the phone, as I flick to the right, I'm going to start back at the
Target
top
selector,
here.
button.
I'm going to hear options like TV shows and movies.
Account settings, button, TV shows, button. Movies, button.
Let's double tap on movies.
Movies. Selected, currently showing movies.
And if I flick to the right, I'm going to get an option for genre.
Selected, all genres, button.
If I double tap on that,
Netflix, all genres, button.
and then I flick to the right,
Audio description, button.
there's actually an option called audio description that will filter out all their movies by audio description. Now, I mentioned everything that's original has one, and you might just want to explore a little bit because audio description isn't really a genre. It's a bit of a big way of looking at it, but this is available here. Now, if you're not using VoiceOver and you follow these steps here, audio descriptions is at the top when VoiceOver is on. But if your VoiceOver is off, audio descriptions at the bottom. It knows if we're using VoiceOver, I probably want audio descriptions, so it sticks it at the top of the list here. Just know that with VoiceOver off, you might have to scroll down a little bit to get the audio descriptions. I'm going to double tap on audio descriptions.
Select loading. Target selector, button.
It's going to load up, and it's going
Currently
to bring
showing
me
movies, audio description.
It's going to bring me a list of movies that all have audio descriptions. Now, just like in the podcast app, if I set my rotor to
Speaking rate headings.
headings, if I flick down, I can actually jump to different genres for me.
My list, heading, action and adventure, heading, watch it again, heading, comedies, heading, movies based on real life, heading, Netflix originals, heading, continue watching for Jonathan, heading.
So let's jump back up to the top here. I'm going to flick up.
Netflix movies, comment, watch, action and adventure, my list, heading not found.
Let's see
Action and
here.
adventure, watch it again, comedies, heading.
Let's find a comedy here. So I'm going to flick to the right.
Spencer Confidential, button, Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, button, The Prom, button, A Black and The Christmas Chronicles, button, a white logo.
Let's see.
The
here.
Other Guys, button, a white added.
The Other Guys is a pretty funny movie here. It's got audio description. So let's double tap and just start playing.
The Other Guys.
Oh, I forgot.
Back
It
button.
opens up a menu first, and I'm going to flick to the right until I hear play.
Target select, account setting, play preview, play mute audio, The Other Guys, rated thumbs up, 2010, play The Other Guys, button,
Okay, I found my play button. I'm going to double tap.
close, button.
In a painted logo, a woman stands on a tiered pedestal. Wearing a Roman toga, she holds a torch aloft. Its brilliant light shimmers against a silver word. Columbia, a Sony picture.
So I'm having a little bit of a problem because I've got this wired into the phone here and because into the display here. So you can't see the movie playing, but you do hear the audio and you hear the audio descriptions, for example. as it's describing actually the Paramount logo before the movie begins here. I need the 2-finger double tap just to pause it. I'm actually going to get
App
out of
switcher.
here.
Close Netflix. Settings. Current action. Settings. Current action. Close settings. Settings. Current action. Close settings. Activate default.
Go back
Settings.
into settings here for a second. All right, so if I turn on audio descriptions in accessibility, and then I navigate into an app like Netflix or any other one that has audio descriptions, when I play media that has it, it will automatically play it for me. If I want to turn it off, I can go back into
Audio descriptions. Heading.
and settings,
Audio descriptions.
and I can turn it back off again. Optionally, in each of the players, you can manually adjust audio descriptions on and off by movie. It's also interesting to know if you are using a service like Netflix and you turn on you log in as your user and you turn on audio descriptions for a movie. If you then try to watch Netflix on a different device like a smart TV, audio descriptions will play also. It assumes if you turn audio descriptions on one of your devices, you probably want it on all. And that's not a Apple feature. That's if you turn it on any of the devices that you have, then Netflix actually remembers and syncs up that setting across every way you might explore it, as long as you're logged in as your user. That's just an interesting little detail. So audio descriptions describe the content of a movie or TV show, are available through streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and Amazon Video on select content, not on everything, but on a lot, hundreds and hundreds of options in each of those services. And it can be available on certain TV shows, and that we're going to explore along with the other services in more detail next time. So I hope that gets you excited about audio descriptions. I will make one interesting comment. My wife has no vision loss herself, but she still occasionally likes to watch things with audio descriptions anyways, especially if she's doing the laundry or tidying up around the house or walking on the treadmill or doing something that's generally she might be more distracted for, and she's not staring at the screen the whole time. The other thing she finds particularly helpful, and I 100% agree, is I've always had a challenge with remembering characters' names. And when you have audio descriptions on and a character walks in the room, it says their name. It says Jonathan has entered the room. And you'll actually find with audio descriptions, you will have much higher comprehension than you will just looking at a movie. So I do think it's interesting. And you might find that you really enjoy it. And then some movies like maybe that work just fine without audio descriptions, and you might not like the distraction as well. But I very much enjoy audio descriptions, and I love sharing it with everybody. So that is an idea of what audio descriptions are like. And with that, we're going to transition to our Q&A.